Hey, what's up, Internet world? Welcome to Powerverse. I am your host, the Golden Mike from the North, Balamau Power. Now, this podcast was created in response to our pivot against the pandemic COVID-19 impacts. Here, we get to explore creative arts businesses, empowering and inspiring stories from our communities of First Nations people across the country. So I hope you enjoyed these episodes. And like we always say here in Powerverse, stay inspired, stay empowered, and stay connected. That's all. Welcome to Power Circle, the platform where we celebrate and have a discussion with artists, creatives, community members, and business entrepreneurs. I am Mau Power, and joining me at the black table, I have a Dedi Bala from the Torres Straits, a pioneer in this field for Torres Strait acting and filmmaking, Bala Aaron Fazo. Hey Bala, thanks for being on this program.
Yeah, I got a cream for you, my Bala, and it's a real pleasure to, I guess, first and foremost, like, yes, you for the extension of the invitation. And I think, this is the first, Torres Strait Islander, podcast. So I'm thrilled to be part of the start of this your new journey into the digital space.
Yes, man. But I hope this will become our platform, man. And
absolutely.
Yeah, so excited to have you on, man.
Wow.
There's so much things that I'd inviting you on. The reasons why I wanted to invite you on is I know you have a wealth of knowledge that we want to give to our followers out there. We'll unpack that on this this discussion. But first, as we do your cultural way, if I can ask if you can introduce yourself, like in your background.
Yep. I want to acknowledge my people, or my boy, my totems, that of the Samoan Tidal clans of Saibai, and in the Torres Strait. And basically, I was raised in between Cairns here and Bamaga and Saisia.
Yes.
And obviously, my people were, or the Saibai Island people were, well, my family in particular, were the first small group of people that decided to establish where we now the communities of Bamaga due to saltwater inundation in 1947.
Yes.
After much discussions with the local First Nations people of the Gurang, Yarakana, and the Muti people of the Northern Peninsula area, we were able to establish those communities. And yes, more or less, we were the first pioneers in this, as Torres Strait Islanders, establishing a community on the mainland, but also indirectly, we were the first refugees as well.
Wow, yes. That's an interesting perspective to put it that way.
Yep.
Wow. Man, before I continue, phones, can you have phone on silent? Is yours on ultra?
Wow.
All right, cool. But yeah, no, thank you for sharing it up, Bala. NPA, this region from Cairns Gartab is very interesting. Like I would say, it's unique. It's the place where it's diverse and where the two cultures actually meet.
Absolutely.
And you growing up in that community, like, first of all, I want to paint the picture for people who don't know that particular area, the five communities on top, but between NPA and Torres Strait,
wow,
the Kaiwalanga region. Your experiences, and how would you paint that picture to somebody out there?
I guess, look, it was just rich. It was just rich, just a wealth of cross section of you had this fusion of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander integration.
Yes.
But also, and that was purely by default from an environmental
yes
impact that forced my people to decide to, pick up stumps and relocate to the mainland, and therefore, on foreign land.
Yes.
and then establishing a community. But through over the years, you've seen there was first and foremost there was an immediate relationship develop, and prior in around World War II, a lot of Saba Islanders and a lot of Torres Strait Islanders that were, I guess, enlisted in
Yep.
light infantry battalion.
The largest, I believe, yeah.
It was the largest volunteer
Yes.
of men in the Southern Hemisphere.
Yes.
It was the largest group ever enlisted on a voluntary basis, 873
Wow.
men. And this is way before that we were even, I guess, recognised on the census as Australian citizens.
Yes.
So that's another interesting discussion.
Yeah, well, just for our listeners out there, and prior to that, for the followers and those who are watching who don't know the Australian history, our people were classified as flora and fauna.
Yeah.
And this is it's an interesting thing, not even recognized in our country, but then moving forward and volunteering to defend.
Absolutely.
Homeland.
Still getting paid, if not anything, in any wages. There was it was also the ration system was was in place as well. So I mean, you when you think about it, but yet still wanting to take up arms and protect this country. And look, and strategically, I think that particular front line, and even now where the Torres Strait just plays such a strategic point or area for our country, for our national security.
Yes.
It's such an important place, and so I guess from that we can go back to that story.
So
There was already these relationships being formed during that time, during World War II. So hence, fast forward, 47.
Yep.
At the same time, my great grandmother was Workar. She, along with her other elders, traveled to do the negotiations with the local traditional owners.
Yes.
And then upon receiving a decision in an agreement in that also formed that particular consultation also formed the basis of the kinship and traditional adoption that occurred between
yes. Wow.
those those traditional owners there,
Yes.
and between Saba Island families, that being my family as well.
Yes.
So that became the foundation of those kinship relationships that now continue to exist in 2020.
Wow. That's rich in that history, man. Like, not many people know that.
Absolutely, and then that's where and growing up, you had Ingenuity, what was formerly known as Coal Creek, but Ingenuity, Yamajico, and there's Bamaga, Numapun, and Saisia, and that those communities, and being able to go and visit families and all and those relationships that were forged back from 1947.
Yes.
And we still remain to acknowledge and foster those relationships. I mean, it was just rich, just rich for everything from horseback riding to four-wheel drive experiences. I mean, and then you've got the saltwater there where across that coastline there, and then you got the eastern coast. So I think a lot of those times going back for holidays up there, and then with those experiences growing up here in Cairns as well.
Yes.
Only I guess gave me a great sense of appreciation for the diversity of the diversity of First Nations communities throughout the Cape, in the Torres region as well.
Yeah.
It's so diverse. I mean, you go from community to community. Like, it's almost, it could be, I guess the analogy is almost related to when you go from in Europe, you go from one country,
Yes.
one border. It's exactly the same. I mean, you look how Arakan is so diversely different to Cohen,
Yes.
but same kinship to Lockhart.
Yes.
There's a kinship connection, but when we call it, when it comes to language, ceremony, and even features, diversity different.
Very, very different.
Different. Then you got all the intermarriages, intermixes
Yes.
there.
What?
So and there's been a strong relationship throughout the Cape community, especially on the eastern coast, the Eastern Cape communities, with our Torres Strait Island relationship, because of back in the day it was them trokers
Yes.
and pearling luggers
Yes.
that fished along the east coast there, pulling into communities like Lockhart.
Lockhart. Yes.
And starting to engage in relationships in there. So there's like a cross section of kinship connection right through. Like you can't go nowhere. Everyone's connected.
Yes.
And you can't talk about anybody.
You can't, and it's interesting when you walk in and say, "What name are you?" So you look like your family from this way. Like
Wow.
the outfits, like the way we identify
Absolutely.
people is different, and this goes back to it being informed by your culture and having that connection, right? And I know we say up in the islands, up in these regions, that we're nations within a nation.
Wow.
And you just explained perfectly why that is. With the different, even though the kinship is there, the different cultural setting.
Oh, look! Even if you go from Mir, or
Yes.
the Miriam of the Miriam people of the eastern cluster of the Torres Straits, are diversely different.
Yes.
To where you may come out from.
Yes.
The Gudamalurgal.
Yes.
People of the top western region.
Yeah.
I mean, in features, in language,
Ev-
custom.
Yeah.
We got the Murray system.
Yes.
In top western and in western, it's
Different.
It's different there. We're eastern, and that's the beauty, I think, of even in the Torres Strait culture. It is just so diverse and different from one another, and even how it all plays out in the Kulkalgal region of the central Torres.
Yes.
And diversity, like in terms of environmentally,
Yes.
and even our songs, dances.
Very different.
Wow.
Man, like this, I want to unpack this one because I will lead this one back into what you do as a profession. But just with that conversation, like having that understanding, and I know from being in the field of corporate sector and other parts of business that, and I just had a conversation with a crew member about this one just literally before you came in, is not having that context or knowledge or understanding limits mainland Australia to be able to communicate or have a relationship with it. And how important is it from a perspective of the First Nations person from that region that the nation needs to know about this basic context? Because building relationships, we can't start building relationships if you don't have a common understanding.
Absolutely, and I think it's just completely evident that of our current system's inability to be able to engage in efficiently with First Nations people, because of the inability to know those finer contextualized ways of communicating through the pathways of culturally appropriate engagement, and it's not until you have a lived experience and you've spent time in community to understand the levels and layers and the players
Yes.
that are across a broad spectrum of layered community. We got layers. We got community layers within community as well. Like,
Yes.
So everything from song, dance, ceremony, to boy systems, totemic clan systems.
Yes.
And how that informs you not only within your in the island, but also how where the boundaries are in regards to the reefs and systems.
Yes.
Okay, so I think what has transpired and what continues, and we've seen in terms of the gaps and the disparity in the gaps when we talk about service delivery.
Yeah.
It's continued the inability or effectiveness to be able to communicate on our level with community people because the community because we're not at the table making the decisions.
Yes. Speak about it, brother.
We're at the table. We are still in 2020 talking about and still deciding whether we are going to have a voice in Parliament, a voice to Parliament. I think we've effectively shown, and not everyone has to agree in terms of the process. The process. But was the Uluru statement was a great showing of a collective voice, a voice of that. We may not all agree in terms of that process. We can agree to disagree, but that's the diversity of informed engagement, right?
Yes.
About communicating, about consulting in a real way.
Yes.
And what the Uluru Statement provided was the ability for us to come together as First Nations people in over, a short period of time.
Yes.
To engage in consultation, to be able to take a piece of document that it may not be all in agreement, but it was a collective representation of the ability for us to come together to provide advice, to provide a document on how First Nations people and a platform for First Nations people to engage with decision making on a national level. Wow.
That is complex, right? On a basic level, it's interesting. We're born into this realm. It becomes a part of our makeup and our being. And when you hear someone outside doesn't have the context, the communication barriers now begin to they're present.
Absolutely, and it goes back to just simply say, as simply as. We know the system as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander. We speak the system. We speak the government speak. You and I can code speak. We can switch codes.
Yes.
Depending on what environment we're in. We can have the yarn at the pub and take that same yarn and code it differently to be able to articulate at a high level conversation with our counterparts in ministerial advisory positions.
Yes.
But yet, it has been shown that the inability to be able to converse or even take information from a community level and be able to take that same message from community, gathered, and be able to deliver it efficiently and effectively. There is still a gap. There is still a gap, and there's a report that's delivered annually that the gap has informed us that it is continued to widen.
Yeah.
So therefore it only goes back to that, we need to be at the table making decisions on for ourselves, by ourselves, for us, by us.
Yes.
Wow. And only we are the keepers of that knowledge. We are the only ones that can really contextualize and get to the source of what, those issues. But in partnerships.
That's what we're looking for.
Partnerships. Actually, we want to sit at the table. And
real partnerships.
We want to sit at the same table and make those decisions. I mean, if you're making a decision about me, well, you better have me at the table too.
Like you're sitting there like, whatever. You get the message and the member's like, hey, wait a minute, when did this happen?
Hey, what the fuck? When did this happen? Fuck, let me speak to me. Fucking late text, yeah? And we got many forms of technology now. We wonder we're engaging right now.
Right.
Don't tell me that you could not get in contact with me.
Man, true, very true.
We're not living in the days of smoke signals here.
Even send a smoke signal. I see it.
Yeah, send a smoke signal.
I know what that signal means.
We'll take a piece out of bloody Lord of the Rings, bloody what do you call it? Games of Thrones, and send me a pigeon, damn it! Send me a crow.
But that's, part of why we created this platform, Power Circle, to have these conversations and really bring context to people who are maybe limited with their knowledge in this type of engagement. So we have a voice. We celebrate the achievements, but we also offer a platform for the voices, so we can then impact change, and move the agenda forward, so we can get at the table.
Yep. And it's a really exciting time at the moment too. I think that the wonderful thing that, first and foremost, I want to acknowledge, the severe impact that COVID has had globally, and definitely offer my condolences, prayers, and thoughts to all those families that have been adversely affected during this time. With there's been many deaths. There's been recorded and because of the direct effect of COVID.
Yes.
And there's many, and it's impacted, the global economy.
Yes.
And we see here and now in Cairns here how it's really kind of affected, especially our tourism.
Yes.
Industry, but it's also provided many opportunities across the landscape into, giving us a real, I guess, an experience, an exercise on steroids to actually look at our business structures and our business models.
Absolutely.
To now look at either downsizing or looking at parameters to be able to pivot into other areas, or to diversify into areas that was once may have just been a thought.
Yep.
May have even been an experiment. Where now it's actually a real pathway now, because the current business models are quite redundant, have become obsolete under this time.
Absolutely.
So being able to move laterally, or pivot into other, which may be in a third stream, now becomes your mainstream.
Absolutely.
Because the other two streams are now currently redundant, because we're not getting any overseas fly-ins.
Yep.
The economy is taking a bit of hit, so we're going to look at how do we look at capturing this domestic market now?
Yes.
That we need to put on track. Where does Far North Queensland or Cairns in general look at, where do we pivot from into really now actioning a diversity in industry? What do we bring back?
Yes.
What do we revitalise? What are the opportunities in the marketplace that we've said for a very long time here in this, this region, neck in the woods, that we all know that it's been far too reliant on tourism. So what are the opportunities? Well, we need to start looking at other avenues now in terms of diversifying industry here. So it's also, I think it's the COVID has given us a greater sense of consciousness. I feel it's raised consciousness on a global scale. Certainly with we've seen the recent global social justice movement.
We will touch on that one, because there's a big part that I want to get from your perspective covering that.
Absolutely, and I think it's and that's also given focus to our own continued domestic plight when we look at our own people and the issues, the social justice issues and the social issues that continue to widen. And when we talk about the gap around housing, education, and employment,
yes,
that we are here now still in
it goes back
2020.
Back to your point where you're saying being at the table to have this discussion.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'll try and tie all this thing together, because it all interplays in everything that you do. So, you growing up in a diverse culture, and I can see that as an extension within your company, Lone Star Films.
Yep.
Right? And everything that you do with the work. So we can go through all the list of the creative works that you put up there, and I will also go to the one Blue Water Empire.
Yep.
Where you covered everything, like the diversity, also the history of our men volunteering, but you take it back to wartime and take it way back. This is all informed information that it gives snapshots of things that are currently happening still. Like take us through that journey, how you tie all this in, how does your culture inform you when you're having these conversations, whether it be in the world of film or creating stories, telling our stories, or speaking about real life issues that are affecting our people.
And I think, and you're well aware of this too, Pat, because you're in the industry as well, and you still, I mean, and you're across a few, you got your fingers over a few pies, so you're well aware of the disparity of the lack of voices.
Yes.
In our industry, and there's a big push, and especially, and this is these are one of the other opportunities that COVID has provided as well. Is we are now seeing that our current film and television industry, domestic film industry, needs the business model is currently it's imploding.
Yes.
It's on the international global marketplace. It's actually redundant.
Yes.
And it's obsolete. So I think there's an opportunity now, just in the very same way that we're talking about now in terms of how I've touched on being decision makers at the table.
Yes.
I think that's has got to permeate through all industries, and this will take time, of
Absolutely.
course. But I think it's got to start where I think there's an opportunity for the film and television industry, certainly whereby we can be as let's talk about diversity and screen inclusion. Well, if we're at the table making decisions at the table, and if we as First Nations people sit in the core of the national film and television industry business model,
Yeah.
we won't. There's no need to be having these conversations about diversity and inclusion because we're already included through the entirety
Yes.
of the industry, going from in front of the camera, but also back of the camera, from higher level decision making, from executives to broadcasters to digital platforms.
Yes.
That if there's policies and legislation that factors in First Nations inclusion across it all, then there is a blueprint and therefore a foundation for the gender conversation.
Yes.
There's now a real platform for the inclusion of ethnicities. There's a platform that because we now have a blueprint, because you will first get the First Nations inclusion correctly first. Get that one done pass.
Yes.
Because we be a pass.
Yes.
And that is able to lead in to covering every other voice or lend to the inclusion of other voices, which is really important. And I guess it's shown that other internationals have shown that the economic correlation of increased revenue
Yes.
that is associated to diversity on screen.
Yes.
Or diverse voices, because that's what audiences want to see now. I mean, certainly, that's what Netflix has presented,
Absolutely.
those opportunities.
I know we had this discussion, a few points.
Yeah.
From that perspective, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yes, so Netflix and the other rest VODs, I mean, they've basically disrupted the industry. So in such a way where it's either you get on this diversity, you get on this other international marketplaces are playing to that thread, are already at that space. So for us as the country and in the national industry, we've got to start reflecting what we see when we walk out there.
Yes.
Reflected back onto our screens.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, like, and we'll unpack this one, because I consider you a maverick within the field. And we were talking with Brother Jimmy, who we work with, and our brother will talk, and we were painting the picture of everything that we did was a forced move, especially in entrepreneurship, out of necessity.
Yes.
And looking at moving forward, like if the current system is always like this, being a maverick, I want to get your view on this, but creating different pathways and creating your own opportunity rather than relying on the same system. But to also get your perspective of how do we move the agenda to move to that point of being included in those conversations from those levels within the industry? Or how do we address the fact that, like in Netflix, that we disrupt the current status quo?
I think where it starts from, it'll definitely, I think, and it goes back to the voice to Parliament. So where, again, it's having us at the table on executive national boards, engaged in those spaces, whether it be Screen Queensland, Screen Australia, the ABC.
Which you do you actually sit with them, and I've seen you do a lot of work behind the scenes. Not many people know that you are engaging in these conversations.
Absolutely, and I think it's it's work that I take extremely seriously as well, because I think you see, and that's just, I'm just part of what's already been started from Uncle Wal Saunders and all the rest of those great men and women that forged pathways into what we call the film and television industry.
Yes.
Well before I got into the game. So it's basically, I'm just in that slipstream and in my way and giving my contribution, and if any way that I can, certainly widen the pathway and knock it down a few pathways. Well, I think that's only better for us in our future furthering inclusion and advancement in the industry. So I think once we need to be elevated and need to start having these discussions at really, really senior, high level, top level discussion rooms and decision making, and will be. I think there's an exciting opportunity for the industry to lead itself without having the invitation to the voice of Parliament, because we play in the creative space. I think we're more inclined to be a little bit more innovative and a bit more maverick. But however, there is a conservative side to it as well, because part of the show is also the business. So that's where there's always, it's like it's like the yin and the yang. It's like having two conversations.
I did a post out there. I'm like, people understand, and this is for young artists as well, in particular, that as creatives, when you come in, and I see it very heavily in the music industry, you focus on the artistic side. When I always say, Dr. Dre said it the best, man. This is the music business. You have to focus on the business side, and that one we'll touch on. I'll get your perspective of how you balance that and deal with all of this. By when I say maverick, I mean like we come out there, and I think it's always embedded in our DNA from a cultural perspective as well. We're very entrepreneurial to creating our own opportunity. I mean, creating something out of nothing. You can use the hunting analogy.
Man, you're living on an island, man. You gotta be. You know what I mean? You got to be able to think laterally, because it's all about. I think Torres Strait Islanders, just all islanders in general. I mean, we see with our Pacific Polynesian counterparts, but I think to be able to live on an island with a group of people without killing one another. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I mean,
very difficult.
Very difficult. So you got to be able to navigate that space, right?
Yes.
I mean, obviously, but to be in a position where you can come to an agreement that we can disagree without killing one another as well.
Yes.
But at the same time, to be able to work with each other.
Yes.
And to as one. But still being able to have the respect and say, we always don't agree. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And
that's the training ground for being able to deal with the political system.
Exactly. So that's what I say. If we get pushed, certainly in the business world, whenever I had pushback or whatever it is, it's like, that's okay. I'm not going to get upset. I'll just move sideways. I'll just move back. Or I'll move to the right. So and I think. And that's where I think just naturally, I think we from a cultural perspective
Yes.
as the thing is, it's just informed us that way.
Yes.
To be able to pivot, or leverage, or
Yes.
and be able to. I mean, you do it every day, Pat. It's like be able to spot opportunity.
Yes.
So just if I do, and but also having that ability to have the fear to try it, or the no, or having the ability to welcome failure, and to
Yeah.
be not to be scared of failing.
Man, I love failure.
Oh man, it's where you get your
I
greatest.
strive to fail.
It's where you get your greatest learnings.
Absolutely.
And your own
Let's
case studies.
Let's unpack this, because this is I think we're educated.
But first, let me just knock off this.
Yep.
So in terms of, there's an opportunity here. I mean, and where we can have true change in terms of the industry to one, remodel, reposition in this new plan, because the screen industry's presented a new document, and we all had an opportunity to submit onto the 4-point plan or 4-point suggestion. One was to keep the industry as the same as the status quo. The other was to respond in, they make a couple of changes. The third was radical change, and the fourth was. I forget what the fourth was anyway. But anyway, the two that really spoke to me were to make slight change or make radical change. And I was in favour of radical change.
Yes.
Because radical change is what is actually needed. Radical change is actually what we're asking for in terms of a voice to Parliament as well. Because the status quo, we let the status quo, the disparity, of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people engagement and the level of disengagement and disparity. I mean, it's shown in our the further explosion of numbers in being incarcerated. Yeah. I mean, we're having, once upon a time it was just us brothers getting thrown in, and then there was in 1995, I think, or it was 2014. It was the percentage was like 14.8. I think that's jumped up to 28% or 30% nearly of incarceration. But there is an explosion with our women. I mean, you just got to go to Cleveland.
Yes,
we're seeing I got so emotional last year when I visited Cleveland Juvenile Center in Townsville.
Yes.
I knew everybody in there, and there's like nearly 1,000 kids. There's nearly 1,000 kids there.
Yes.
I knew nearly every one of them, and they were from the 3Ms here in Cairns.
Yes.
The Cape and Torres communities, and they were all like kinship, like I knew them, or I knew of their father and the families. I mean, it was just really, really disturbing. So until and this goes back from the from our opening discussion about. Going back again. We'll go back again. We'll revisit. This goes back to having that voice to come to Parliament, so we can have are able to make those decisions and be part of the law and policy and legislation making for our people, because who are going to be impacted upon. Yeah. Where they're making the decision, but also there is a filter of community, regional, state, and federal conversations around the table that we're there on, and having those high level decision making conversations, which goes back to again that will also further influence our industry, because it's heavily government funded. So that'll therefore have the same I feel that the impact to our industry, and there are already really great people continuing really great work in our space, with the Screen Australia Indigenous Partner with Penny Smallacombe.
Yes.
Douglas Watkins at, Bella Douglas, Screen Queensland. There's the Indigenous Department at ABC as well, and also the great work that, Tanya Orman, Kai Sheriff, they're doing at, NITV. So, there's a lot of great work being forged across the landscape, but I think this is a really, really exciting time now as we move forward in the roadmap out of COVID, what this new business plan in terms of the business model for our domestic industry. I mean, you just imagine, like, we've got 60,000 years of storytelling. We've got storytelling, we've got stories for days, years, millennia. I mean, wouldn't you tap into that resource?
Absolutely.
And I think that that informs us as practitioners. Going again, I mean, the way that we are is, and the way that I am is totally informed because my DNA it's Torres Strait.
There you go.
That's it.
That's it. And this, to us, the conversation, we have it all the time. It makes sense. But this is so complex for other people. And I guess that's where we're coming back and, looking at your journey or what you're doing to push the agenda forward, especially through your creating your company, said, to hell with it, I'm not going to wait for anybody. I'm going to start telling the stories.
Absolutely. And then it also goes back to, that another, Torres Strait Islander, ethos is like, make him. Just make him.
Yes.
No wait. Time no wait for no man.
Very true.
Make him. So, very simple. Make him.
We're practical people. We just do it. We'll figure it out on the way, man.
We'll figure it out on the way, and we're very practical people. And then the theory makes sense then.
It makes sense.
Yes, it makes sense then, okay?
Yeah.
So we could try fast, then learn after. That's true.
But I guess that's
do the learnings.
I guess that's why our teachings comes in the form of song and dance.
That's right.
Because you learn from a practical standpoint, and theory don't work. I don't read like that. Like, I do read, but
then the songs make sense.
It does make sense. Yeah.
It makes sense to you. But if you learn that song pass,
yes,
the dance becomes easier.
It becomes easier.
Yeah, absolutely. So my journey in the industry, when I came in, I realized very, very quickly that, there was, and when I came in as, my introduction in the industry was from an acting point of view, or an acting perspective, landing back down in Sydney, because I had a couple of cracks at Sydney.
Yep.
Through my football
Yeah.
aspirations.
That's right. That was the first.
There was a first movement.
Yes.
Yeah, there was a first movement, and then that was part of the second movement as well. But this was probably my third attempt.
Yep.
At Sydney, and this time something really something landed. But in saying that, once landing in Sydney and into the immersing myself in the game, that being the film and television industry, I realized really, really quickly, man, that there was no roles for Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander.
I remember you telling me this. Yeah.
No roles at all. It's like, and it was a really, really bad time too for our industry, and it's pretty much a similar time that we're experiencing now, where not a lot of Aussie productions were being made.
Yeah.
I think there was McLeod's Daughters, Stingers, and then you had the Neighbours and your Home and Away. But it was really the opportunities were really, really limited during 2014. It was really a really bad year for the industry. Well, time actually. So and they didn't. No one knew who the hell I was. Rand hadn't hit.
Yes.
Rand hadn't because I came in the industry on the back of filming remote area notes for the SBS network. So that was the first gig.
Yes.
But landing in Sydney, finding it really, really quickly that no one knew who the hell I was because there was no context or relevance. There was no show to hang anything off, and they hadn't even this diversity thing hadn't even we just talking about this like 15, 16 years ago. So this diversity kind of I guess question or inclusion man, it was foreign. That was like speaking another language, you know, in the industry back then. And so I, you know, it didn't take me long to kind of realize that if I was going to, you know, sustain a long, or sustain a career in the industry, that I needed to diversify.
Yes.
So I had to kind of also, okay, so I looked across the landscape and said, damn, you know, unless I, you know, reincarnate myself, you know, as a white fella, my,
It's like, just that analogy, it took a minute, I'm like, wait, what did you say? But I feel like that sometimes. I don't want to go there, but...
Yeah, I mean, you know, like, but if my screen, you know, I guess, career was going to be extremely limited.
Yeah.
All right? And I knew that I wanted to engage in such a way, because I saw an opportunity that, you know, there was just a, you know, and I think we all feel that when we first come into the industry. And look, there are so many more opportunities now than there was 16 years ago.
Yeah.
And obviously, well more than 25 years ago,
Yeah.
with the establishment of Australia's Indigenous unit. I mean,
Yeah.
you talk about, I'm thinking that was hard. Just imagine trying to, you know, like Uncle Lester Bostock and
Yeah.
all those, you know, cats that, you know, the OGs that you know, got in, you know, were empowered and inspired. We're inspired to actually, hey, we need to create a space
Absolutely.
for our people here, man.
Yes.
So, yeah, and you know,
That's what we say. We stand on the shoulders of giants, man.
exactly. And I've got nothing but, you know, praise and honor for those great men and women who forged, you know, the pathway that we were able to be beneficiaries of.
Yeah.
You know?
So this part, what you're covering now, is part of the journey where when we talk about, you know, failures, welcoming failures, but the challenges you face as a business. I mean, I want to drop some gems now. You know, some young aspiring, you know, artists or creative out there, or new micro businesses creating. How do you persevere through these things? What is it that you do? Like, what do you, because we more challenged, but I remember we have these conversations all the time. Sometimes, being in the world we are as entrepreneurs, it's a lonely road sometimes, right?
Oh yeah.
So what carries you through all of this?
Sometimes, you know, you can travel with no light or just one light too. Like,
Yes.
You know what I mean. And sometimes you're just like, where's that end of that? Where's that light in the tunnel? I don't know. It's like, Mama, just keep walking. It's like hit a wall or something. Well, obviously it's not there. Just kind of.
There's this great graph that I saw with the cycle of an entrepreneur. You start with an idea, then it's like, oh, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Then it gets up to the point, it's on top of the world, and then it starts dipping. What the fuck? What am I doing here?
What am I doing? And
then it goes up again.
Sometimes you feel like that too. I mean, but you know, I think it's all about risk taking, and I think as entrepreneurs, I think it's that risk. I think something like you've just got to be gifted with. I think it's that. I mean, I think I'm just naturally. I mean, you can certainly, you know, develop those inhibitions. And to make calculated risk, I guess it's always great to make calculated. But sometimes it's being able to just smell opportunities and just go look at it and trust your intuition.
Yes.
And just rolling with it, and
Yes.
And then, you know, what are you doing? I said, I don't know, man. I'm just still trying to work it out. You know? But it's in the doing that you do find the hows. But I think for, you know, for me, what kept me going, I guess is just sheer determination, but also coupled with a strong work ethic.
Yes.
I think
Very important.
Yeah, I think if the opportunities are there, or I mean, you will make your own opportunities. Or have, I mean, but it's all in the doing. I mean, when you sit down frustrated and unmotivated because of your challenges, I mean, challenges are all there to be overcome, and again, it goes back to mindset as well.
Yes.
And I encourage to anybody or everybody to just engage in reading great positive literature or tapping into literature or books or audio books by known people or OGs that created that space, like along the lines of Napoleon Hill,
Fantastic.
the
I got the book right. Think and Grow Rich, man.
the
It's the Bible.
Bob Proctors of the world,
Yeah.
and that particular landscape, and then there is a multitude of players along in the industry, but I think the more you kind of edify yourself.
Keep on, man. No,
Yeah, the more you edify yourself through those books, I mean, it just builds a resource, a mental resource, and that's where you need to really focus, because it's the mental challenges that you're going to come up, and that's the big thing is now in terms of the mental health space.
Yes.
So I think the more that you can fortify yourself with all the richness that you can extract from those books, and it's just like you read it once and you put it aside, and actually read it again. I mean, these that's where you actually, and in the doing, and it's in the doing, and when you start to make those milestones and those opportunities, you're able to see opportunities. I mean, because the books, coupled with what you're doing, the drive, the planning, it all kind of starts in some way, synergizes with one another. Then all of a sudden, an opportunity presents itself. Then that triggers another opportunity and another opportunity. Then you start looking, okay, there's an opportunity over here, and you start. Before you know it, you start building this momentum.
Yes.
And then over 16 years, you'll be able to recognize opportunity really quickly. You're able to, then you're able to compress the sale time or the jag time when you're able to seal the deal. You're able to compress that down.
Because it becomes your makeup, your being, right?
Absolutely, but why I say. But I really encourage that those types of books, and literally they don't say enough. I mean and even just tapping in, like for those Christians or those who are Muslims, or tap back into the good book, tap back into the Quran.
So much parables in there that you can apply.
Exactly, and it's really important as black fellas as well, is that that we're not only I guess developing our mental capacity or educational capacity and knowledge, but it's also that that we do. It's all holistic. I'm getting the holistic stuff there, whereas
This is great.
Eating properly. And if you do indulge, you're indulging in alcohol. I mean, you watch that, but also that you're also nurturing, developing yourself spiritually, because it's your spiritual. What you got to really like. There's not a lot of focus put in. There's a lot of focus put in the education, mental, and physical, and also exercise and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
But one of the major components is the spirituality. That also is nurtured and strengthened and fortified as well. So when you hit these challenges, man, and you're always going to get challenged, and you know yourself,
Absolutely.
and when you know yourself, who your friends are, how many friends you got when you're broke,
Truth.
You know straight away.
Truth.
How many mates, how many ballers you got when you were dead ass broke? You find out really quickly who your friends are, man. And part of being an entrepreneur as well, and starting out and earlier, but it can happen anywhere. Hey, finding out right now.
Yes.
How many suckers are strapped now?
Yeah.
How many are holding on to the money now? And I think it'll be interesting what happens post September. I said what we're going to see post September.
Yep.
we're going to really start feeling it, I think,
Yeah.
the real effects of COVID, because the stimulus package will start being retracted,
Yes.
and businesses are and
There's a lot that's disappeared, man.
there's a lot
They were here
there's a lot that's not going to come back.
Yep.
They'll be just gone forever. So
But interesting, like you touching on that point that with the holistic perspective, the spiritual side of it is where I believe a lot of people are not don't focus on, and that informs everything. But it's like the mind, the body, the spirit.
it is a balance.
Meditating and being able to go and finding that self, like time
Exactly.
to self. Echoing the stuff that you're saying with the books, like I wasn't a big reader. Like when you're going through school, I found it as difficult to focus.
It's only because when I engaged in the industry that I became a reader.
This is what I mean. Like I love business. I consider it as an art, and then I found
it's a craft.
my interest in business books. I experienced it, it's like audio and visual. Think You Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, I made it a discipline that I listen to that once a quarter.
Yep.
Because every time I revisit that and experience that book, something new happens and I'm at a different point in life.
Absolutely. And it gives context and it'll hit you wherever you need it, wherever that point you are when you're in your life. And there's always new things, there are always new gems to be mined. So I think, it's really, really important, especially now, we're finding that, more and more, more and more people it's not such a stigma now to be talking about mental health and,
but it's important that we do.
It is, it's really important. So there's a great platform in and around that. And, in this game as an entrepreneur, you're going to get your dark times, man. And that's what I'm saying. That's what I say. Look, if you're coming into the game, or you're looking at coming in the business, also, these are the things that you need to actually just fortify and be already starting looking at to holistically look after yourself. Because when it'll be those times when your challenges, the deal doesn't go right, or someone's stretching that negotiation out.
Yes,
is being able to have
is
those.
Is there an example or experience that you might have had that you don't have to go into too much details, that you can put in a context where these things were
I think
important at that time?
And I was post the Straits. We didn't get a second season, and I'd moved back in that period, 2008. I'd moved back to Cairns. And I was, I guess, in the hope and the feasibility that this was going to be a longer running series.
It's a great series too, by the way, brother.
That's so well.
Wow,
yeah. Yeah, no, it was. When you think about it, a lot of people kind of, respond positively, and they do more so now, I find.
Yes.
But in the hope that we'd have like a season 2, season 3. So I was, got back here, and so I was kind of like looking at setting up shop, and I already had, had a production company in partnership with Penny Chapman and Helen Pankhurst, who are my, initial mentors in the industry.
Yes. Which
Matchbox. So fast forward, we don't get a second season. I'm stuck in Cairns, but all these because I was blessed with so many, back-to-back productions between, 2006 to, I think it was a good, I had a massive run for six or 7 years. I mean, I still do, but...
So Brand, Streets,
East West 101, Subdivision.
It
was just like bang, 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 bang.
The prolific, bro.
Yeah. So I was on this run, man, and then all of a sudden, boom! I was, must have been that they always talk about the 7-year cycles. I think
that's that dip now.
I was in the drought cycle, man.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so it was famine. So it went, a relationship went south. Like it was really, I was bad. No Straits 2. I was dead broke, and had to move back at the time. Went through a bust up.
Yeah.
Had to move back with my child at the time, Melanie, my daughter, my youngest one. had my boy over at studying, was boarding over in Brisbane. But due to my financial situation, I hit rock bottom, broke as a joke.
Wow.
But then it was kind of like, I went through that period. Yeah, I hit the alcohol hard. I was like, I went through this downward spiral for about I think a good maybe 6 months.
Yeah.
And man, somebody's got to give. I'm sick of this. I'm sick of this. I'm sick of this. So I end up, I think in 2013, I set up a production company. Then I pitched the Straits. I mean the Blue Water Empire. Started developing. So that got picked up, and then I landed. And then I landed. I went and did a trainer and assessor.
Yeah. Yes.
Trainer and assessor, Cert 4 qualification through TAFE. Mum was working at TAFE, so anyway she got me this. Hey, there's this course. I said, yeah, okay, I'll do it. So because I started dabbling into, okay, look, maybe there's an opportunity here. I know there's an opportunity to develop the industry here. So how do I do that? So I was like, well, I'm develop myself. Just develop a whole heap of an acting course. Then that actually inspired me to develop a short film program.
Yes.
Then I start speaking on my pathways.
Yes. I remember that story.
Then I jag a contract there, and I think it was the figure of I think about.
We don't need to discuss.
Yeah.
If you want.
Yeah.
You can if you want.
No. I won't disclose that.
Six
But
figures, yeah.
I think it was a little one more figure.
But I mean, yep.
But what I'm alluding to is like I was putting those because I started reading those books. I started moving into all of those what I've been talking about. So what I'm talking about, I've lived it. I've been in the hole.
Powerful, brother.
I've been in the hole, and it was a dark hole, and I was able to pull out of it, crawl.
Yes.
Then walk, and now I'm running. So
you're flying.
Yeah, and flying now. So that was and then when you look at 2000, then that's 2000 and 13 to it was 2012 to 7 years ago. So yeah.
Deadly, brother. I mean, thank you for being that honest and sharing that story. I mean,
you got to be. I think you can't just say, oh, well, what does he know? I'm just I've lived
from
it.
experience.
I lived it, man.
You lived it.
I lived it, and and that's and I know what it was, how tough it was, and that's the apart from wanting to continue to provide for my family. I think the biggest motivation for me was, and still is today, my biggest motivation is that fear.
Yep.
Of going back in and having that experience again, but not the fear to fail.
Absolutely.
Okay, there's a difference there.
Yes.
I don't want to ever. So hence why there's a multitude of streams and projects that there's a slant of projects across, a cross section of industry.
Absolutely.
Because it's not just I'm not just setting myself up here in just the industry. There's other pathways that I have across other
we
industries.
could unpack on all this stuff, brother. We could sit here for hours.
No.
Because I'm going to invite you back on this program because I really want to dive into the new stuff that you're going through. But just to add to what you were saying in that part of the journey, like that feeling of it's something sticks with you when you go through that feeling. So I share a similar story with that, like going through. That's why 2012 we started One Blood Hidden Image out of necessity because the industry didn't want to touch an artist from a remote community. But then going through a similar cycle where that failure when you hit rock bottom, man.
We've been there. We've had this conversation. We've had this conversation over a few drinks, but but yeah, like I mean that's why you and I I mean, there's a shared experience, and
Absolutely.
there's that shared experience about, one being motivated to, forge our own careers and companies and businesses, but it comes from that experience of
Yes.
going through these trials and challenges.
Absolutely. And to our your followers out there, man, success cannot come without failures.
Oh yeah,
You got to fail your way to success, and
Absolutely.
that's where the learning really happens. Like I had a couple of failed businesses, man, and it taught me so much of what not to do.
Exactly. It just sharpens your craft.
Absolutely.
It really does. And so, okay, then we'll just redivert.
That's it. That's it. But most people then turn and run, like want to hide or run. But I guess what you gave, the gems there to be able to carry them through mentally and spiritually, is very important in this time, because the mental well-being is very serious in our communities. Our people, man, they're taking their lives. Like the suicide rate is high because of not being able to manage. So we need to celebrate stories like yours,
Yep.
and we need people like you to be able to speak about. Okay, look, I'm not speaking from textbook stuff. I'm speaking from this book called Experience.
Yep, absolutely, from experience. And then those particular, when I'm talking about those textbooks that spoke to me,
Yes.
like The Power of Now.
Yes.
I mean,
and they're people's experience.
people
You
experience.
want to
and then
save 20 years of your life to pick up a book, man.
Exactly. And with that Power of Now, it's just like it spoke to me, because I was like, hey, this fella going through the same thing I'm going through now. So I'm going to read this book.
People would call it coincidence, but I think it's these crucible moments come with divine intervention from the universe.
Oh, no, I believe that.
And it's interesting that when you're going through that thing, something happens in the universe where you are directed to different forms of mediums that give you the messages that you need at that time.
Oh, no, definitely. And you've got to be open for them too. You've got to be open for them. And, I think it's... And it's also being open for it, then you're able to go and start planning and moving forward. I think there's nothing... I think you should always write down stuff.
Yes.
Where you like, in terms of, enough couldn't be said about, writing your goals, where you want to be, where you want to go to. Because I think it's true, this is from those texts that I've read over years and years. Because once you start writing down stuff, you might not move on it.
Yes.
But it just does something. It's something about writing something down.
I know this too well.
Yeah, you said something about writing. Well, you stop it, because you're a lyricist. But it's something about writing something down. Then you write it down a few more times.
Yes.
Then it starts sinking in. Then you action it.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, this is great. What you could say, a motivational speaker or someone, an empowerment person by the name of Earl Shove.
Yes.
Who was the mentor of Jim Rohn, and then then we get to Tony Robbins.
Yep.
But Earl Shove talked about goal setting, and something happens when you write it down. It plants a seed, unconsciously. Like this, I'll give you an example. This power circle that we're talking about. This was 10 years ago. A thought that was written down.
Yep.
5 years ago, I was looking at where the industry, because we went through the things with the Indigenous Producers Initiative, and seeing where the industry, like, I think it's something that we share, that we can foresight and see differences and new changes and trends within the industry.
Absolutely.
But same thing you said, wrote it down. Didn't know what the title was, but I knew that this had to happen.
Absolutely.
And then COVID happened. I said, this is why it was written down.
And I think we've both done that. We just wrote stuff down, then all of a sudden, boom. I said, man, I wrote that down
exactly.
I wrote that like 5 years ago. It's like, okay, we're doing it now. So yeah, and there's power in that. But yeah, look, I think moving forward, learning those lessons, inform me, especially on my journey now, going through that whole development process and the delivery of Blue Water Empire, and just where it's kind of really ramped up.
Yes.
In the production, in the content production side of things as well. So so many great opportunities of pre-COVID and even during COVID on the opportunities that have opened up on the domestic but also international
Yes.
film and television marketplace.
My brother, it's always inspiring. I have a yarn with you. I'm going to have to move this Sunday to the close, but I want to offer an invitation to see if you're open to be invited back, because I
Oh,
really
absolutely, brother.
this is our platform. We yarn.
Yeah.
We want to yarn about everything. We touch on so much things, and I'm sure there's a lot of gems out there that the followers will get. Before you go, I always ask everybody who graces this table in that seat, if there was one key value that you carry yourself that you can pass on and empower someone with and bless them with that gift, what would that one value be for you if you want to share?
Have always believe in yourself. Always believe in yourself, and don't be scared of engaging in something or and not making mistakes. Mistakes are there to be made so that they become they become your steps to moving forward.
Deadly, my brother. Thank you, bro. I want to say big yes for you coming on here and sharing and blessing this table.
Oh, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. No Power Nation, there you have it. The Deadly Bala Aaron Fazo coming here and gracing and dropping gems here at the black table. I am Bala Mau Power, and this is Power Circle. Stay inspired, stay empowered, stay connected. Yes, sir.